Hello, everyone. Again, we are glad to see you all here, and thank you for taking time to join us in this meeting. Well, the panel will last 45 minutes, followed by a 45 minutes open mic discussion, where everyone's free to ask questions or share comments on this. Also, please note, as with all Wikimedia events and meetings, you must all adhere to WMF-friendly space policy. I also want to remind you that our meeting will be recorded. Video, chat, and transcription of the meeting will be available in coming days. And what do you need to know during the meeting? First, please turn off the microphone if you are not speaking. Second, if you want to ask a question, raise your hand. What you can do, use the hand icon, what is given on the bottom of a Google Meet, or write the following in chat, like this, and wait until your turn arrives. Also, if you want to can put questions and comments in the chat, you are welcome to write in your language. We can translate it from Arabic, Russian, Spanish, French, German, Turkish, Georgian. And finally, keep your questions short and on the topic of the panel. Please be laconic when asking a question or commenting on something. We give you a minute for this, or 2 minutes. If you don't keep this, unfortunately, I will cut you. That's all from my part. Oscar, please.
Yes, now I will introduce the great panelists that we have today themselves, with no particular order, only that the one is second in meta. We're going to start with Chris, please.
I don't hear you, Chris.
I'd muted myself. Hello, my name is Chris Keating. I was chair of the UK Wikimedia chapter for some time, and more recently I was on the Roles and Responsibilities Working Group.
Thank you, Chris. Anna?
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm here on my capacity as part of the strategy volunteer during all the process. I was with Chris, part of the Roles and Responsibilities Working Group, but of course also I'm the Executive Director of Wikimedia Argentina. And yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Anna. Shabat?
Hello, my name is Shabab Mustafa. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm one of the founding members of Wikimedia Bangladesh chapter, and I'm currently serving as the president of the chapter.
Thank you, Shabat. George?
Hello, or good evening. Here, my name is George. I'm currently the board member of Wikimedia Georgia, and I'm also teaching politics at the university. And I guess it's gonna affect my introduction a little bit.
Thank you, George. Maria?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm from Spain. I used to be part of the Resource Allocation Strategy Working Group, and I'm currently the chair of the Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Maria. Well, the discussion around this topic has been a little bit hectic, and we, as a facilitator, have the feeling we need to tie some knots in order to recollect the feedback for the board in the upcoming elections. Also, in order to answer a specific question, we have also Karel Wickler here to answer that. He will be happy to answer them. Now, I'm going to start with a leading question. After that, I'm going to go around with the panelists to answer them. But we're going to start recollecting written question in the chat, starting now as well. So please go ahead and answer your question in the chat. Let's before they start with, if Karel have a quick presentation from himself, please.
So my name is Karel Vaidla. I'm working with movement strategy team for Wikimedia Foundation. And this is just a quick note before we go into the panel and the discussions. Because we had several questions coming, like why are we discussing this topic on the Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees elections thread, and just from my side, there are kind of some key items that need to be surfaced. So first of all, there are notable similarities probably between the processes because we are talking about the governance. And also Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees has served for a movement governance role. So it makes a lot of sense to have connection points between the processes and also be intentional about the learning between the processes. And we need to kind of also look forward, like as we advance with the movement governance piece, to kind of monitor well what is happening on the Board of Trustees elections part, and where meaningful, connect, evaluate, and learn, and also iterate and adapt. So basically, with the movement strategy team, we have eyes open regarding what is happening around the board elections, so we can also integrate things from this process to the movement governance piece. And regarding kind of clear next steps regarding how we proceed with the movement governance, the discussion piece is still open. But what we also see is some of these kind of bigger movement governance items might also emerge in the kind of Board of Trustees election thread. So the idea here is just to be intentional and explicit regarding the connections. So that's why I feel from a movement strategy perspective that this panel is really, really helpful. And we are also making the effort that whatever is discussed here, we are bringing to the movement strategy thread, so people are also aware of the advancements and discussions that have happened here. So this is just a bit of a framing around the kind of panel and today's discussion, and I'm also here to then take up any movement strategy specific questions if you happen to have them. That's it from my side. Gracias, Oscar, back to you.
Thank you, Carol. I almost forgot you, sorry. Well, now I'm going to start with the leading question, and there is a bunch of what if with this discussion. But the leading question will be, and this is for the panelists to answer after this, how can the Board of Elections be organized in a way that support the movement strategy process? How to avoid confusion and exhaustion among volunteers interested in participating in both process. With this, I open the floor to panelists for the next 45 minutes. I will share the question asked exclusively in the chat. And for the next 45 minutes, we have open mic for anyone to go and chime in the discussion. With no particular order, anyone who can start in the discussion, please go ahead.
So I can go first to avoid an awkward silence. So to my mind, the interesting part of this conversation is that we have two different questions, or two different election processes that are going to be needed. One for the Board of Trustees, one ultimately for the Global Council. And the same issues arise in all of them. Like, there are lots of questions in this process about how can we make the Board of Trustees diverse and representative and effective. And then we're going to have the same set of questions to ask whenever there are elections to the Global Council or the Interim Global Council. So quite a lot of the conversation, I think, is going to be quite similar between those two elections. It's the same challenge of how do you find a way that works for the Wikimedia movement of making sure that these bodies are effective, diverse, and representative. However, the answers are going to be quite different between the two bodies, because you are electing 8 people to the WMF Board of Trustees, which is quite a small number, particularly quite a small number if you are trying to make sure that it's representative of the vast breadth of the whole Wikimedia movement. Then for the Global Council, you have nobody knows how large it's going to be. In fact, nobody at the moment is quite sure who is going to decide how large it's going to be, or how the whole process of getting from where we are to having a global council will be. But it's going to be much larger than 8 people. Therefore, it will be much easier for the Global Council to be a really representative body. So yeah, those are my first thoughts.
Yes, I'm gonna jump in. Thanks, Chris. I think that I mean, I'm very much aligned to what just Chris said. I think that the only thing that we know for sure right now is that the Board of Trustees elections are going to happen. That's the only elections that for sure we know that are going to happen. Again, there are so many unanswered questions on the table regarding how we are going to be building or setting up, for example, the Interim Global Council. And there have been several discussions in a lot of channels and a lot of proposals to make that happen. But we are still haven't decided how we're going to be doing it. So if I have to be realistic in terms of what is really going to happen in terms of elections, is the Board of Trustees elections. So what I'm expecting, at least from my perspective, is that those people who are elected or can be elected at least known well enough that the strategy process is happening and have some kind of commitment to make this, make the implementation happen. Like they're committed to the implementation to be something real, something that we are going to be seeing the next month. So that's what I'm expecting. Maybe this onboarding with the new people who's going to come as part of the Board of Trustees. That's what I'm expecting to see in kind of profiles of the skills needed. On the other side, in terms of keeping things moving regarding the Interim Global Council, and then of course the future Global Council, that again, what Chris says is very important. We still don't know the size of that Global Council, how many people is going to be involved, how it's going to be elected, probably with another elections. That's something we have heard a lot. But when this is going to happen, we still don't know. We still have to sit down and, for example, set up the Interim Global Council or set up a committee for the movement charter. The Global Council is also responsible for the movement charter implementation, and we still don't have a movement charter implementation. So for me, having at this moment of the movement, for example, focusing on building the movement charter first and working on that and provide the legitimacy that the movement charter needs within the movement at the same time that the Board of Trustees elections are happening. It's something that I've seen quite doable. And then in, I don't know, since September, October, I don't know, I'm just making this up, start thinking how this can be translated in the future Global Council, that then of course we will need to figure out how to do it and how many people, right? There's a lot of unanswered questions on the table, but as today, for me, the only real thing that is happening in terms of elections is the Board of Trustees. I would like to see at least that the new people coming are committed and on board. Yeah, they have the proper onboarding regarding the strategy, and they are committed to implement the strategy in the following years. And I'm done.
I'll jump in if nobody is against it. So first of all, both Chris and Dan are exactly right. Until we have some coherent ideas about the functions of these bodies, it's going to be extremely difficult to discuss the election procedures. Without specific numbers, without specific ideas behind what the functions of these bodies will be, it will be relatively difficult to identify what will be the proper way to elect those people and even to communicate what they're supposed to be doing. My organization worked on several associations of people. Of course, none of them has been as global global as the things that we're designing right now, but still, we outlined several core basic principles. It is correlation between legitimacy, authority, engagement, and transparency. Since we are creating something which is based mostly on volunteering, these 4 principles are extremely important, because without total transparency and without maximized engagement, it's going to be really difficult to explain to people why actually they should be participating in all of it. And also, there should be very specific relationship between the regional hub, between the Global Council, and the Board of Trustees. We should be able to identify what will be the functions of each of these bodies, what will be the relationship between these bodies, who will be responsible for what, and what functions they will be doing. While preparing for this panel, I also thought of any organization which has any similar structure. Technically, the only thing that I came up with, it is the United Nations, because they also have the sort of Security Council, which is supposed to be managing the organization, responsible for all basic core decisions, and they also have the General Assembly, which is responsible for kind of legitimacy part. The problem of the United Nations in general is that all the decisions are taken by the Security Council, and the General Assembly is kind of an addition, which does not have any actual power. So and I would like to avoid this kind of design flow in the things that we are creating. So we should be able to identify what will be the functions of the Global Council, what will be the functions of the Board of Trustees, how they will be connected, who will be responsible for what areas. And when we do it, I think then it will be much easier to identify the ways how to elect people, how to spread information, and so on. Well, that's it from me so far.
Well, I will jump in next. Actually, what the other 3 panelists are saying, I am in complete agreement with that. Anna brought up a major question, that there are a lot of questions that still we do not have the answer. Another thing, having multiple bodies like Global Council and Regional Hub, what we are trying to achieve is empowerment to the community and diversification or dissemination of some sort of powers to the community, like Global Council and Regional Hub. This is as I understand that this model. So there should be a clear guideline about how we are restructuring the existing organizational hierarchy. So Global Council, if Global Council only intervenes on certain areas or not, and even when actually the question of election or selection comes, it hugely depends on having those kind of answers first. The power dynamics, the new power dynamics of the organization who is taking the decision. Is this person is really right for taking this kind of decision and making things easier for us, or things like that. So answering the question whether we should go for an election or a selection, or we can elect a selection body and then the selection body select people, whatever model we will be following, we need to have the clear answers to those questions first, that what will be the power dynamics of this kind of thing. Because if we do not have any kind of power, like in what I can think of in a democratic situation, power can be putting like having some vote, or maybe passing some any major decision should be passed from the Global Council first, and then the board will go for it and sign the executive order, that kind of thing. So if we have a model that is multi-layered hierarchy inside the organization, so we need to know actually what we're trying to achieve by having a Global Council and having regional hubs, because on the Global Council meta page, what we find that publicly stated that one of the major role for the Global Council will be holding the board accountable and also taking decision about the board terms and other stuff. So if we go to those models, so we need to actually figure out first how the Global Council will fit in the bigger picture. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Shabbat. Maria?
Thank you. I think there are some great ideas coming from the other panelists. I think that the way that the board elections can help support this movement strategy process is that what we're doing right now is, I think for the first time, taking a very deep look at the governance of WMF, right? And what is, at the end of the day, the Global Council and the Movement Charter, but talking about the governance of the movement itself, right? And so, in a sense, we're already starting to deal with these questions that have generated a lot of commentary, and we are seeing that there are many, many thoughts around them. I think it's been very interesting as well to see how many different communities we have. I know we've seen it, especially during the strategy process, but maybe that wasn't as visible as this process. Again, this is the first time we're trying to resolve, informed by the strategic recommendations themselves, trying to resolve issues from governance issues in the WMF board. I would say, I mean, at the end of the day, this process has always been about sharing and distributing power, right? And I think we've reached this point in the process that it's about how can we establish methods so that the communities are able to take up this responsibility, right? Because we don't have these structures, and this has been identified as an issue. And we need them not just for movement strategy, but for the movement at large. The movement has asserted a desire to lead, and the board has endorsed the strategy, but the power has not yet been moved. How we do this work now to lay the foundation for everything we want to build on top of it, that's going to be the conversation for the next months, right? So I think that's how the board elections can help, sort of like a pilot to how we start co-creating these processes in which we discuss governance between the different communities. I mean, even this process right now in which we're having different calls at different times of the day, global conversations, this is all new. And we can keep iterating until we can get to a system or a method that most communities support, right? I will highlight something that Anna said that I think it's very valid, right? Without getting into operational or tactical details, I do think that something obviously important, but that still needs to be said, is that whoever trustees whoever candidates get elected as trustees, they should be fully supportive of the movement strategy. I cannot conceive of candidates that directly say they do not support the movement strategy process, right? I don't see how they could be successful. I think it's obvious, but maybe it does merit saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I think we acknowledge the discussion that is happening in the chat right now, but please try to focus and, like Maria said, how the next board election is going to be and how we can better support the movement strategy. I acknowledge the discussion that is happening about governance, but please try to keep on topic or this call up for feedback. With this, Chris, you want to say something? You're muted.
Well, I'll mute myself. That would be good. There's a conversation happening in the chat about, well, what is the power relationship between the Board of Trustees and the Global Council. And part of it, like in the long term, who knows? But in the short term, the relationship is that the Board of Trustees will be delegating some of its responsibilities, some of its influence to the Global Council. What does that mean for the Board of Trustees selection process? Well, to me, it means that this is not the time to separate the community further from the Board of Trustees nominations. Some of the options on the table about electing nominating committees, or basically anything that's not a election of one form or another, to my mind, that because the Board of Trustees will retain so much power and require so much legitimacy from the community for at least the next year, probably several more years after that, now is not the time to kind of make communities feel more remote from who gets elected to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Chris. Yes,
Yes,
Josh.
I want to... Oh, sorry.
Yours, and later to
No, Anna, please, after you.
Thank you, George. Yes, I wanted to say something else related to these new trustees, or the new people that is going to be joining the Board of Trustees in the early future. As Chris said, as is written down in the recommendations, the Global Council is going, hopefully, to have some very important tasks, like governance tasks within the movement. This is not something that we came up from one day to another. I think it's worth talking a little bit how the process went, and also that we had a lot of discussions, and also, again, the recommendations were open for feedback. I remember in January, and then we incorporate all those feedback into the recommendations. So it's not that we just decide, okay, the Board of Trustees is going to be doing this, and the Interim Global Council these other things. I think this is a discussion that, of course, needs to happen, and both both governance bodies need to sit down and discuss and transfer roles, define roles and responsibilities, and transfer those responsibilities that, again, the current Board of Trustees has committed to do. They enforce the recommendations, right? So that's on one side. How is gonna this happen? It's very difficult, but what I know, and it's true, is that all these responsibilities that are currently defined and list on what the Global Council is going to be doing in the future are going to affect directly to the communities at our local level, right? It's about funds dissemination, it's or allocation resources, it's branding, it's about I can't remember now, sorry, overseeing implementation, right? I mean, there's so many specific responsibilities that are going to affect us directly. So for my perspective, the people who is going to be elected to for the board seats, beyond being committed to the implementation of the strategy, they also need to be representative of the difference or the diversity of the movement. They need to be representative, because if then these people is the people who is going to be negotiating with the future Global Council representatives to transfer responsibilities, I would love or I expect these people to understand my local context and to fight for my local context as well. So it's not just the commitment that they have to do, but also the that they need to represent the diversity of the movement, because then they need to sit down and transfer some of these responsibilities, and we need to cover the diversity of the moment when transferring those responsibilities, and they have to be an answer. Yeah, they have to they have to be an answer for the challenges of the communities at the local level. So that's also something that I wanted to highlight. And I'm done, George. All yours.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I fully agree with both of you. And I also strongly believe that this election should be viewed as a kind of transition period, transition towards more openness, more engagement, more ability for people to get engaged in the activities. Because, well, we're all a community of volunteers. And for a volunteer to keep motivation, to be interested, to keep engaged, this volunteer has to have lots of engagement opportunities. Without these opportunities, it's going to be really hard to keep the work that we're doing right now and also to look into the future. That's a very brief comment.
Okay, I will go next. Actually, coming back to the original question, how can the next board election can be organized in a way that supports the movement strategy process? So there has been a lot of talk about appointed seats and regional seats, and I already discussed about it. Yes, it is important to know the local context, and it is important to take decisions based on those local context as well. And about appointed seat, yes, we need some specialists. I also think yes, we need some specialists need to be included in the board, because the movement is getting bigger and the real tough challenge to solve there. But about appointed seat, one thing that I should mention it very firmly, that whoever we appoint to as an expert in the board of trustees, if we do that, so we need to ensure that they have deeper understanding about the main philosophy of our movement, because most of the time what happens, if we appoint someone from the corporate world, or have a bigger financial experience in the past, or have worked in a different area and have a particular skill set, but at the end of the day, if it does not align with our core philosophy and they advise something or go for something that is fundamentally not okay with the community, so there will be more friction in the future, I guess, because community, we should avoid any kind of those things, any possibility of those things. So we need to be very careful about if we appoint someone on the basis of selection, because if someone comes from the outside of the community, most probably election will not be a very good idea, because community do not know them. And yeah, so there should be some scope for selection, but very careful selection.
Thank you, Shabbat. Maria, do you want to comment on this, or others panel that have said?
Yeah, I was trying to catch up with the chat. I can say that the board is very committed to movement strategy. I saw that there were people wanting this to be reaffirmed, and this is true. Of course, the board is going to keep changing, but I find it very hard to believe that this would change. I think there are many ways in which we can try to address the governance issues that both the movement and the board want to address. I'm seeing also questions about transfers of power. I think these are the important questions, and these are the discussions that we need to have. Those are the ones that we have started, and it's fine. I think it would be good if we try to approach them sort of with a blank slate, because I don't want people thinking like, the board will never agree to this, or the board will never want to do this kind of transfer of power. Actually, we are very interested in doing this kind of thing. I anticipate that at one point, what we're seeing today with the attention and the importance of the WMF board elections will completely transfer to the future elections of the Global Council. When the Global Council starts dealing with movement strategy and so on and so forth, I think that's when we will be talking more and more about those kinds of elections, and that's absolutely fine.